He goes, we're not designing a shoe for Michael, right? He said, we're creating a story in the shape of a shoe. I've always said that the two things that have pulled me through my career were curiosity and challenge, which is that looks really interesting. That looks like that might be fun. And then the challenge is, and I might get hurt trying it, but like, let's give it a shot. Am I ready for it? I don't know, but let's give it a shot. If I take a great leap and I'm going somewhere that people haven't gone before, yeah, of course I'm carving a path. If the path was there, we would know that it's going to work. But if I take a swath and I make that cut and it doesn't quite work out, I actually know something or know more than those who have never taken that step. I remember Mrs. Hagley, the science teacher at my high school, that let's just say she was a little gruff. My picture was the one that would end up on her desk at the end of class, and it would have passed all the way around class, and then the caricature of Mrs. Hagley ends up on her desk. I was that kid. When the lights came up, he pushed back and his glasses were off, and he kind of did that. He's like, every Broncos fan needs to see that. We're like, yes, okay, so we're going to infuse this into your logo and your uniform, right? And he's like, okay, yeah, let's go. Both were a bit of a crash and burn at 18 years old. Basketball's not going to work, and kid, you're not good enough to do this design thing, so you might want to pick something else.
Ken, thank you for joining me. I'm embracing the journey. It's a pleasure to be connected with you. I was thinking about wearing Adidas stuff today just to see how you'd react, but I chose against it. So
yeah,
we'll talk a little bit about your Nike journey, I'm sure, from start to finish.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Great, thanks for having me. And the good news about long Nike career, but being out, I'm a free agent. So the day I left, I had my middle kid asked, "Hey, does that mean I can buy Adidas now?" So we're loyal, but also as far as brands go, a little more diverse these days.
You don't step out with Adidas stuff for the most part, though, right? I'm assuming.
Not so much for me. Yeah, it's harder for me. Yeah.
So obviously we got connected through a mutual friend of ours in Dr. Gary Russell. So it's strange how these kind of small circles work. We get connected. So I'm very interested, obviously, about the early days of how you got started and how that journey goes. But I do want to start with something that we've spoke about, I think, off camera, something that I've taken from looking at your podcast and looking at some of the things that you've put out there. The common thing that continues to show is about seeing things differently. And a big theme of this episode today and this conversation is about curiosity. That's how Steve and Gary kind of put it to me. Is this will be a fascinating conversation about curiosity. So we'll delve into that a little bit later on. But can you remember when you first realized that seeing differently did change everything? Do you remember a moment in time? Do you remember a lens that you were looking through where that kickstarted?
Yeah, this is learning how to see different, and for me, coming to this belief that seeing different changes everything has been a lifelong deal, right? I've been fortunate to have a really interesting career that helped me understand what was going on. But when you ask that question, I don't think there's an awareness early on that it would change everything. But I do. There's a memory very specifically. I think it would have been probably 7th grade. Middle school, my best friend Storm Hayes, at his house, and you grow up in the house you grow up in with the family you grow up in. You got your rules, and you got the things you do, and the things you eat, and the things you don't do. And I remember being at Storm's house and telling him, "Hey, I'm thirsty," and he's like, "Well, go to the fridge and grab a drink." And I opened the fridge, and in the fridge there was like a 6-pack of 7-Up. And a 6-pack of Coca-Cola, a 6-pack of Diet Coke, and like root beers. Like it was like looking at a vending machine. I'm like, this isn't. I didn't know people like who has all this stuff in their fridge. Like we don't have this in my house, right? And so I don't even remember what I took, but that day has stuck with me of realizing that we only know what we know based on what we've seen. And until we have a moment where we see something that is different, those lights don't quite those lights don't even quite come on. And so for me, it was less about being, having a sugary drink and more about, there are different places and ways in the world, even though it was just down the street, than what I knew before, which was fascinating to me. Um,
And you learn that from soft drinks in a fridge, all the different.
who knows what? See, this is the power of curiosity, man. You never know. You never know where the inspiration or the lesson might come from.
I'm glad you didn't say a six pack of Corona or a six pack of
Yeah,
Stella. Yeah, they could have gone a different way.
yeah.
Um,
No, I'm
it
not
does
sure
go,
about your audience yet, so we're keeping it family friendly. Yeah.
yeah, it does. It always goes back about the idea of having to experience things to
Mhm.
really understand what you're capable of, as opposed to because when you're younger and you see all these things, and it's
Yeah.
the if I knew what I knew now kind of thing.
Right.
But you do have to experience things to fully appreciate or show
Yeah.
gratitude for the things that you've developed, right?
I
Um,
think I think there's a combo there too, which is one is just limited experience connects to limited knowledge, limited understanding. Right. I've only seen so much, so how can I know more? And then there's the other piece, which over time I've really spent a lot of time thinking about, is the notion of blinders. Right from a young age, our parents begin to want to protect us, and so whether it's at home or in school or at church or whatever, there are a lot of grown folks with the right intention who are attaching these blinders to us, like, don't touch that, don't do that, this isn't safe, um, this is how you do this, right? And so I think, and I don't know what the answer is, but that was a day, just as one example of when that fridge opened, it was almost like a certain blinder came off, and it was like, oh, that was one of my own. But even things I think are important, like, a parent telling a kid, don't touch the stove, you'll get burned. Like, that's good parenting. Like, don't
yeah,
burn yourself. And at the same time, it's a blinder, because you know what? I tell you what, if I touch the stove, I
you're
will
not,
know. I will
yeah,
know, and I will never do it again. And I can explain what it felt like and all of those other things. So while they are important in one sense, they can, and basically as we grow up, they become more rigid, and more are added. It can make it difficult for us to see alternatives and see options and actually embrace them.
yeah. My curiosity is the reaction to the
Hmm.
kid that would touch the stove and not do it again, but would cry for 5 days
Yeah,
because, or the versus the kid that touches the stove will never do it again, but is like, yeah, and move on to the next one.
yeah. Or it's a badge of honor. I got it. Yeah,
Right,
that's my,
yeah, proud
yeah,
proud of the scars that they pick up, or the blisters. So my
yeah,
my curiosity comes from the difference in attitudes and
yeah,
people that can approach the
yeah,
next part differently.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I know we'll talk a little bit about your journey in a little bit, but it kind of
Sure.
brings me back to when you're in. We were speaking before about college and somebody telling you shouldn't be in a specific moment, and you went away and were then told you should be in that environment, and how you react to that. We'll talk about that later, but um, mentorship and people around you play a huge part in that, right? We talk about blinders with your parents telling you
Yeah.
not to do things.
Hmm.
I'm trying to let people, especially kids that I coach now, explore more rather than provide so many rules. What kind of mentors did you have early on that
Yeah.
kind of allowed you to approach things that way?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. Um, my I had shown like a certain amount of talent in just drawing. Like in church, I would draw these gigantic dioramas of like a football stadium, right? And what's happening in the bleachers and what's happening on the field and all that kind of stuff. And to my mom's credit, she saw that and found there's a designer downtown in the town who grew up in Salem. His name was Dave Adamson, um, and she helped me my I think junior senior year in high school, pretty much. Just asked if I could spend time with him. So I got like a career ed credit, and I spent time with Dave. He showed me how to make a logo, showed me what designers do, um, and gave me that window into the, hey, there's a possibility to have a career that's connected to something you do well. Because I wasn't good enough to be an athlete do that. And so Dave was a huge piece. I worked for him later as well, and the way he approached things really was cast a wide net. So if we're doing a logo for or a T-shirt design or whatever, I remember Dave saying, "Hey, I'm going to lunch. When I come back, I need 50 versions of this, whatever this thing might be." I'm like, "You're back? How long? How long is this lunch?" He's like, "I'll be back in an hour." I was like, "Okay." And so the process in that case of going, how do I come up with 50 different versions of anything, requires you to literally open your mind and let anything in that would be like, oh, I could do something like this or this shape, or what if we do something like that? That was the starting point. I think the other piece,
How
career
old?
wise,
How old were you when that
I would have
happened?
been 15, 16. And then I worked with Dave for Dave again when I was probably 21.
And were you naturally good at drawing illustration? Was that something that
Yeah,
you?
more cartoons and stuff. I was the kid that would do the caricature. I remember Mrs. Hagley, the science teacher at my high school, that let's just say she was a little gruff. My picture was the one that would end up on her desk at the end of class. It would have passed all the way around class, and then the caricature of Mrs. Hagley ends up on her desk. I was that kid.
Did you sign it at
So,
the very beginning so she knew it was you, or it was
yeah,
just?
they knew it was. They knew it was me. Head down in the back, right, and everybody chuckling. So, yeah, there was that, and then later on, a little bit later on in my career, I was fortunate to work with some uh, amazing folks. As when you think about how did I wake up to the importance and the significance of seeing differently. One would have been working with Tinker Hatfield at Nike. So worked with Tinker. Tinker's like legendary sneaker designer. Worked with designed a ton of Air Jordans, and worked with Michael and cross training and all that stuff. And I can remember a breakfast with Tinker. We were in Scottsdale to present some work to Michael, and it was just he and I. And I'm a young pup. He's already a bit of a legend. And he just said, he goes, we're not designing a shoe for Michael, right? He said, we're creating a story in the shape of a shoe. And that was like, mind was like, oh my goodness, right? That's like the whole rest of the world is playing a shoe game. Like we're trying to design shoe. I'm trying to design a better shoe than you. And what he's telling me is if we can find something about the story of who Michael is, his style, his energy, and infuse that into something that is labeled as a shoe, we'll have something different than everybody else. And simply by seeing it as a story as opposed to a shoe, I was like, okay, this is a different deal. That was a lot of the ethos of Nike, but for me, it was. I remember that as a moment when um, I realized not just the things you're doing can be seen differently, and if you change those rules, you have an advantage, but the way you get there requires a different kind of curiosity to ask different questions. So if I'm not asking about a shoe, as in, do you like a high top or a low top? How do you like to feel when you spring off? Like you got to ask those questions, but you're asking more questions about, what moves an athlete or what in that particular moment in time inspires them in an interesting way. Oh, with motorcycles, you're all about motorcycles right now. Like, let's look at the engine and the inner workings of a motorcycle. And let's like get in and look at the aesthetic and then the function and see how that can carry over. Um, Not only does it change the end product, but the truth is, it becomes a heck of a lot more fun.
Right. Yeah, because you're telling a story. You're not just kind of
Yeah,
creating a. I guess it turns into a very um, what's the word I'm looking for? Common thing that you'll be designing if you all think the same way, right? So by asking those different questions, do you have any idea on? I know I will probably say curiosity, but how do you come up with those different questions or different approaches to things? How do you come up with 50 ideas these
yeah,
days? I playing around a lot with illustration tools now, where I can just click a button and it can create me 50 different versions of something. You growing up, you don't have those tools. So
yeah.
I don't know whether we build the ability to ask the right questions these days because we rely on prompts, we rely on software. How do you think through obviously, was it Tinker Hatfield asked
Yeah,
you a question which made you curious about how you see things differently.
yeah,
What's your process in figuring out how you can ask how you can ask something in a different way that will
yeah,
create a variety of different outcomes?
yeah, yeah. That's great. That's an awesome question. For me, the first thing is you got to learn to be a really good listener. Like, listen. If you're sitting with someone and they have an assignment, and um, you can have the curiosity in the sense of true empathy, where it's like, what actually are you trying to do? So as a designer, I'm helping somebody solve a problem. Like, hey, I'm coming to you because I need a logo, or I need a product, or I need a whatever. And starting with why is a great one. Why do you need that? Why does it matter to you? How do you want this to be different? What is it you're trying to? What is it that you want the world to understand about you or your brand based on what? And if they say we want something that's different, like, what does different mean to you? You got this and you got that, right? And it is, even as it relates to leadership and other things, I believe that you get to a better answer by asking questions. Like, you can actually not make any statements and get to a solution by asking the next question in line. I think a lot of times we stop at the question, okay, you need a logo, and you've got a fitness center, and you like barbells, and you've got a bulldog. Okay, so you want those things to be mixed. It's like, what's your bulldog's name? Why'd you pick a bulldog? Why didn't you pick a terrier?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, bulldogs are like this, and they think, and I think that actually does a couple things. Is one, when you're creating for someone, or you're even creating for yourself, there's pressure to get to the outcome. Like, how do I get to something that actually works? And even as a designer, you have many clients who are like, okay, but if I pay you this money, how do I know I'm going to actually have something I can use at the end? Well, we don't, but we're going to go on this journey, and we're going to learn something. And in the end, we'll have something, because if we ask the right questions and apply the right um, kind of curation, we'll get there. It also just helps you as a human have more to draw from. You got a wellspring of knowledge and insight. Um, because I thought we were coming. Hey, I thought we were coming to design a shoe for Michael, but then the topic turned to motorcycles, and I don't know anything about motorcycles. But how cool is that, to spend a few weeks learning about, like, what makes a motorcycle? How much chrome versus how much leather and stuff like that. Those are things to add to the arsenal that I think down the road makes you more creative. Um, if the other piece I would jump on, if to what you said, is we got AI that can punch out 50. I think and this is where curiosity, I think, can fill the tank of what it is you're looking for. So I think a lot of times we are now in a place where we're asking AI to figure out what we're looking for. It's like, give
Mhm.
me 50 options. And then we're looking at the options, and we don't even know how to make sense of which one is good or which one is bad. But if we've
Yeah.
done the work in our own mind of asking the question, why, and what is it we're looking for? And I need something that either does this, or feels like that, or looks kind of like this. Then of those 50, we can be a curator. And I think in the AI age, curiosity and curation are probably the two things that will be most important, because there's going to be a lot of junk that spits out,
Yeah.
and a lot of people who can't distinguish between what actually works, what's relevant, what's right, and what's just more of the stuff, right?
Yeah, I find myself trying to figure out why the prompt spits out what it does,
Yep.
and I don't know what the reverse of that is, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, it's definitely an idea of trying asking why is a big question in everything that I've done as a coach, and I learned it way later than I should have done, which kind of brings me back to the skill of listening. Were you always an attentive listener in school? I mean, I guess not. If you're drawing pictures of the teacher in the back of the classroom, you're not. Uh,
Yeah, although, yeah, no, I think I was a pretty shy kid. Like, drawing was my way to kind of have social connection to folks. And even now, like, if we weren't in this setting, I would be not looking up a lot. I'd be sketching. I'd have like a little diagram of all the notes we're taking and sketches and stuff, because that's like my form kind of active listening. But because I was quiet, I listened a lot, and I think it just, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, it helped me observe
okay.
and kind of begin to understand people and situations. wonder about how things are put together and why does that have that shape and this has a different shape, stuff like that.
Were you pretty introverted as a child, or were you an outgoing personality in
Yeah,
school?
I was shy, so I was definitely shy. If you got me talking about drawing or basketball, like I would come out of my shell. Like that would be those are my two things,
Right.
and you wouldn't be able to shut me up. It's kind of how I am even now, which is I'm not a huge fan of talking about myself or just like social situations. Go to a dinner party with people I don't know. Like, oh my god, babe, my wife. Why did you? Why do we? Can we not have anybody here we know? Um, but like on a stage, talking about how to see or helping people think, like I'll do that in front of thousands of people because it's something I love and I'm interested in, and somehow that gives the courage to like forget about the kind of the fears and uh, stuff that comes with being a little introverted.
Can I ask what is it that you draw when you are listening? I know in the
Yeah.
conversation we had prior setting up this call, you
Yeah.
mentioned that you were drawing. Obviously, I take a lot of notes during these to make sure I remember what we're talking about. But what do you draw? Is it a depiction of the conversation? Is it ideas for another design? What is it?
Yeah.
That goes?
Um, Typically, I'll capture key thoughts, like something you'll say that is like, "Ooh, that's really interesting," and either write it down just as a note or a quote, or put it into a word bubble. It's kind of like the page when I'm done with notes is not like a linear outline. It's more like, "Ooh, that's a thought," and then oh, that connects over to this one. The arrow over. It's more of a it's kind of a mind map, I guess I would say, of a conversation, which if you didn't see the conversation, if you weren't in the conversation, you might not know how it all connects. But I
Okay.
think if you and I both looked at it, we go, okay. You would go, okay, I see where he was tracking.
Yeah, it makes sense if you're part
Yeah,
of the narrative.
yeah.
Um, so you talked there about not being a good enough athlete and basketball being a passion. Was that
Mhm.
what you wanted to be? Did you want to be Michael Jordan? Did you want to be
Uh,
LeBron?
I would have played basketball if I could.
Yeah.
I would have, and that's where I tried. After high school, I went to a small college to try to walk on to play basketball, and the reason I picked that school was because they were one, they let me in, but two, they had an art program. They had an art program, right? So I figured, hey, if basketball doesn't work out, I'll do the designs. I'll do this design stuff. Um, yeah, and both were a bit of a crash and burn at 18 years old. Basketball's not going to work, and kid, you're not good enough to do this design thing, so you might want to pick something else.
Do you want to see differently? Then hit like and subscribe and share so we can bring these stories to more people seeking resilience and inspiration. Thank you for watching.
I know obviously you've had an extensive career,
Yep.
big brands, but
Yep.
do you still see in that world now or over the past 2 decades or so that some people resist seeing things in a different way to you, and how do you bring those ideas together in that
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah. Yeah. We are trained. I think we're trained to resist, and resistance is not active. I don't want to participate. I think what we've been taught. Think about math class is there is an equation here that will get us to the right number. There's a right answer, and I think because we're attuned to more of a binary, we need to get to this answer. Um, a lot of us, once we lock on to what we think that answer is, can't see another option. Um, can't be open to someone else having maybe a different answer, or maybe two of you in the room, neither one has the right answer, but we both think we are. So we're so focused on that we're missing like the beautiful opportunity. I think it has to do with a number of things. I'm working with, there's a client I'm helping figure out their future right now. And one of the biggest factors in that is expertise. The folks on this team have been doing what they've been doing for 30 years. Like they know how to do what they do. And that experience is beautiful because you can do it. But when you tell them we need to be disruptive, because every other competitor does it like this, and yeah, you know how to do it as well or better than they do. When you say, hey, what's differentiated about this, or what is better about this? Like, well, no, I know how to do this. This is the way you do it, right? That's resistance. So there is expertise, I think, is a resistor. I think then the other piece is, well, I know how to do it and I've done it this way and been successful. If I do something different, I'm adding risk to the equation, and that could come back to bite me later. And then the other piece is, I think we are raised, especially in corporate situations, and as leaders are told, you need to have answers, as opposed to asking the question of, we look at another option as a risk, because we're asking the question, well, if that fails, what are the consequences to me, as opposed to the other side, which is, what if this works, and the upside is we did something nobody else has ever done, that, like, the future is the other way, right? And so, because we come at it so much from the perspective of fear, as opposed to anticipation, like, that's a reframing right there. If I do it differently, I'm afraid of what might happen. The flip side of that emotion of fear is anticipation. Oh my goodness, if we do this and it works, holy smokes, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No, I
so
think
yeah,
it's
I think, yeah,
embracing the risk, right? It's
yeah,
knowing that there is a risk involved with it,
mhm,
and being open enough that if the risk is great and you fail, that there's still a pathway forward from that.
right, right.
Um,
And I think also there's the other, there's a, this is where I think I heard Snoop say this the other day to someone. It's like, there is no loss, there's only learning, right? If I take a great leap and I'm going somewhere that people haven't gone before, yeah, of course I'm carving a path. If the path was there, we would know that it's going to work. But if I take a swath and I make that cut and it doesn't quite work out, I actually know something or know more than those who have never taken that step.
yeah.
And there's a good chance I can apply that to my next decision, which probably can accelerate my momentum or performance in a different way that other people would know.
Yeah, the reason I love these conversations, selfish, it gets me
Yeah,
to listen to different people's stories, but we always hear cliches all the time, right? So loss is learning, and you learn more out of. So we hear them all the time.
hmm,
But when you're talking about 50 drawings to get to that design with
yeah,
Tinker originally, when you
yeah,
talk about all these different um, resistance factors. It
hmm,
drove me back to a guy I did a podcast with, Dave DiCaprio, who talked about he had a project in the tech space against IBM and all these different, and his approach was to kind of fail first. So it was test as many ideas as possible. I think he got to 257 ideas before they got to the right one,
yep,
the one that worked that actually won the competition, as opposed to at the very beginning have that one idea that you believe is correct because you've maybe done it before or it's been built before,
yep,
and then spend all that time building out this one idea, and then at the end it fails rather than failing 257 times before you get to the right result. And
yep,
that's why I love the storytelling piece, um, because I think you learn more from that than just the cliche of loss is learning. Like I don't know whether that resonates with people anymore. The cliche.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's
yeah. Well, the question is, does the cliche have enough story behind it for you to understand that it's a summary statement, not a throwaway, right? And
yeah.
and to your point, yeah, 50. Dave says, "Hey, I want 50 sketches by the time I get back." Technically, if he picks one or two or three and says, "Let's explore those," technically that means there's 47 to 49 failures
Hmm.
in that group, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we're not talking about, which and we can address it another time or whatever, is scale and level of risk, right? There's low level of risk doing 50 logo sketches, of course, but if you can apply this to bigger, and as I ran divisions and stuff like that, you can apply the same um, mentality, which is, to your point, we're iterating to the right solution, which means we might stumble across it on sketch number 34, Or we might get to it on 50, or we might go all the way to 50 and then come back to 34 and go, well, we explored freaking everything. And in hindsight, looking at all this, that one actually has all the ingredients we were looking for. Let's look at it and maybe mess with it in a different way. And so that's the other part of thinking in the way I try to think in terms of sketching. Your friend you were talking to was talking about his iteration. You want to iterate to a solution. You don't want to be frivolous, but there is no expression or exploration that it doesn't have value, even if you go past the right answer, because you will become more of an expert and know why this one is the right one if I went past it, because I've exhausted what may be out there. And then the path you're on has even more certainty as you develop, you come back and develop that piece. And I think a lot of times we go, well, I think that looks good. I think we've got the answer. And that might be episode 2 or iteration 2 or 3 or 4. It's like, well, we put a lot into it. I guess this is it.
Yeah, I kind of think about it as bridging the knowledge gap between knowledge and experience that we talked about at the very beginning, right? The more you try something, the more you experience something, the more you expose yourself to risk, your experience goes up, your knowledge goes up, and between the two of them, you're shrinking the gap between the two, I guess. So, I want to, I'm interested in how we approach that, because I'm assuming in your space there's a time constraint and a real pressure on getting things designed in time to release to market. Or I can only imagine from watching like documentaries on Michael Jordan, if you're working something specifically in that space for an athlete like that the pressure becomes exponential because of the demands and just the standards that somebody like that holds for the people that work around him.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that idea of looking for all these different ideas along the pressures of the day-to-day world? I mean, I haven't worked in that corporate brand space, so I don't know. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about the pressures that come with that space.
Sure. Yeah. So the pressures, I would say there's a time pressure it's obviously very real. There is there's a pressure to produce something good. And then there's the gauntlet of the committees, right? Within a corporation, you have tons of people who you're gonna have to present it to, who don't get it, who haven't talked to the athlete, haven't talked to the team, or whatever. I think this is to me, this is where I would say developing at the front end curiosity as a muscle. So what Dave had me do, I'll tell me when to stop using that as a reference point. But what Dave started to develop in me was a muscle to go, okay, I've done 5 of these in circles. What if I do a bunch of triangle versions? What if I do a bunch of square, like very simple? It's like a kid putting the right blocks in the right thing, right? But by doing that, it helped me to, I think, be flexible in my mindset to look around and say, oh, look at the spine of that book. It has some type that's kind of stacked. Could I stack this? Right? And begin to just pull influences and learn how to filter. And I think that front end is what served me. It serves a lot of designers in corporate setting well, is having the muscle of curiosity to open up the gates and say, what can I bring in that seems relevant, and how quickly can I sort through it? And then the next question is, what is the story that's emerging here, visually or verbally or otherwise? How do I kind of frame what appears to be revealing itself? And then how do I pour that into an actual design that somebody would look at and go, well, that looks like that'd be great to put on your foot or to throw on as a jersey or whatever the case may be. And you start to walk the gauntlet. And the beauty is that when you present it to an athlete, or you present it to a coach, or you present it to a corporate committee, like the apparel group that's deciding which products are going to sell or whatever, what you pulled in from a curiosity standpoint becomes a reference point. You can start them there, and how you distilled it into a story becomes enticing and engaging, so that by the time you get to the design, their mind, and you've actually put blinders on them and said, hey, think about something kind of like this, could feel kind of like that, could work, like imagine what that would be, and then ta-da, here's an option, right? I think the muscle of that, and whether that's an athlete or others, like, right, I have a meet coming up, how can I be curious to take in the things that can help me? How do I make sense of how it applies to what I'm doing, not just what everybody else is doing? And then when I put that into action and it succeeds or it fails, what is the story I have to tell that helps me to know what to move on to the next thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I wasn't going to go down this route because I'm not a fashion guy, and
Yep.
I'm more an Adidas guy than a Nike guy, to be
Great.
honest with you.
All good. All good. All love.
But I am again. Curiosity is the theme, right? So, can you give me an example of one? Well, and maybe do this in iteration, but maybe one design or one logo or one concept that you've been a part of as a team or an individual, from kind of concept to pitch to final outcome. Can you give me an example of something that you've worked on, just for a frame of reference that
Yeah.
maybe it's something that we would see and recognize that maybe you've been part of?
Yeah, sure. That's great. A fun one. A fun one that was early-ish years for me. Nike had just gotten into the team sports biz. We wanted to get our footwear had always been in the field of play. Apparel had not been authenticated in the same way. So Nike says, "Hey, let's get into the business of making uniforms instead of athletes wear our gear." And so I was fortunate to be on that team. And when we got into that, one of the things that we found was as we're creating a cool jersey, or a lot of schools at the time, we started with NCAA and then got into pro. A lot of the logos were not that great. So we kind of got into, we're like, hey, if we can do our brand, we can do someone else's. So we got to, and I was able to lead this project for the Denver Broncos. So we redid the Denver Broncos full identity uniform, performance of the uniform, everything, which was Nike's first real foray into building someone else's brand. That started with the owner, Pat Bowen, just saying, hey, look, I want Nike to make something that takes football into the 21st century. And we spent 18 months on that work. Started from scratch, had a number of pitches, and that was just a process of first listening to really what he wanted to, what do you want your team to represent? What are you trying to do here? How do you want your players to feel? What's your philosophy for how you're building this team? Who are your fans? Where do they come from? What do you think they want? And then looking at the history, and then building a plan for walking towards something that he could feel confident in saying, yes, that's what I want us to feel like. We started with, the first meeting we came in with him, it was in a team room. I mean, Pat was a billionaire, right? So he comes in, typical, sits down. He's like, okay, where's the logo? We're like, dude, we're not even like, we haven't even begun this conversation. And we cut this really bad video to U2's song of, I had found this legend, this true legend called the Ghost Horse of the Plains, about a white stallion that, when everybody was conquering the West and capturing horses and breaking them, this one white stallion was impossible to catch. And then when they finally caught it, they were trying to break it and it wouldn't be broken. Like, it refused to eat or drink. It would rather not be living than be broken. And so we just put that to a little video. When the lights came up, he pushed back and his glasses were off and he kind of did that. He's like, every Broncos fan needs to see that. We're like, yes, okay, so we're going to infuse this into your logo and your uniform, right? And he's like, okay, yeah, let's go.
Was that the first? That was the first meeting.
Yeah, so that was the first comeback to them, really, again, to set that stage. And that, to our point, what we've been talking about is curiosity led to finding that legend, right? And that came late in the game. We knew we had this meeting with him. And I can't remember what book it was, but it was not just going, hey, let's look at pictures of horses and Broncos and fire and stuff like that. It's literally like, there has to be a story that we can give them that would resonate with everyone who cares about that team and could even spiritually and visually inform how we might design something, right? So when you think about the logo that we created, it has, I don't know if you know, but it has an orange mane. We have the in the eye, there's a little bit of orange, right? We go, the eye is the window to the soul. So like, it's that fiery, we talked about a volcano. Like, what's a volcano? It's dark on the outside, it's a mountain, but has fire inside. Like, that's what that stallion had. And so that allowed us to get to a design that was powerful, was really well received. Like, we were run out of town because we were changing an age-old logo, but in the end, well received. It's 25 years later. And then added a really modern uniform with just massive performance enhancements to it. That had it was the first time we'd been able to really say, if Nike took something, you looked at the whole nut from vision to brand to expression through product and then performance of athletes. Like, it was a powerful project. Yeah.
So within those 18 months
Yeah.
from start to finish,
Yep.
that video you showed, was that towards the end of the 18 months or at the very beginning of that process to get
Very beginning of the
the
process.
beginning, right? I'm
Right.
trying to get the timeline in my head.
Yep.
Because what I'm curious about again is you talked about like the Nike corporate who aren't involved in the talks with the athletes, aren't involved in anything. If you're talking
Yep.
about a billionaire not involved in the process of coming up with something, how many different ideas, how many different conversations, how many different paths did
Yeah.
you walk before you even got close to that final design? And then how many people along the way did you find just hated an idea or resisted an idea or said that's not going to work?
Yeah.
And so you talked to me a little bit about the people you came across. You don't
Sure.
name names, obviously,
Sure.
but people that resisted, and you were able to maybe listen to their feedback and take that in a different direction to get better. Because I think that's an important thing that
Yeah.
we all can do, right?
Yeah, for sure. That the follow-up to that video on that first meeting, we then immediately equated the spirit of the stallion to the volcano that has fire inside, to like just the raw wild of the West, right? Like rattlesnakes and stuff like that. The energy and kind of the aggression in the eye of a snake, right? Which, you look at the eye of that horse, it got a little bit of that. And we showed 3 options of logos that were not intended to be right, but one was pretty conservative, kind of like what he had. Another one was a little bit further, and then another was literally just like a flame with a horse's snout, kind of, right? It's like, which zone do you want to be in, dude? Like, how brave are you actually? And he went, to his credit, he's like, let's go for the one that will, like, that one will make a difference. And there, of course, there was a team on this. I was art director, so leading the team, but we had a binder at the end, and I wish I still had it. We had like a 4-inch binder of sketches that were like multiple little logo sketches on each page. So we're talking thousands of variations. Some of those variations are very small, same horse's head, just different mane, right? But the iterations to go through it were extensive. We're talking about, we created a custom typeface, and so the number of variations of fonts were probably 100. Just explorations to get to a place that we liked. And then the relationship with the team, we were down there probably, I would say, monthly. We had an offsite. There was a venue that the Broncos were friends with. It was a resort, because they didn't want it on their property. They didn't want anybody to know it was happening. So we were doing this all clandestine. It was Pat Bowen, Mike Shanahan, who was the head coach at the time, and then Michael Young, who was an executive but former player. And they were really the main 3, with a few other executives that were in on it. And we just took them through each time the justification, the updated prototypes, and if they're like, hey, it's just not feeling right, we would rework whatever piece it was. But we were trying to bring not only the brand, but the uniform design along at the same time. So there were a ton of moving parts. Each of those meetings allowed us to come home and sit with executives who are looking over our shoulder and saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And be able to explain, well, here's why we did it originally. Here's what their feedback was. And here's what we think the right answer is. And of course, they would weigh in here or there. But when you have the client saying, no, this is really the direction I want to head, that carries a ton of weight. Same as if an athlete says, I need it to feel like this on my foot or on my body when I'm running or whatever it is. And then the job of a designer is, if you get feedback from that client who's saying, no, I really want to go that direction, and you think it's a bad direction, then curiosity kicks in again, which says, okay, I'm not sure I agree. How can we take advantage of what he's asking for and turn it into a positive? How do we solve that? How do we apply a design solution to actually make that the right thing, which might not be exactly what they're asking for, but once we can explain what it could be, hopefully they see the light and recognize we are trying to make the best decision for them. So, and then that's the process all the way to the end. In the end, there's a press conference, the whole thing, which is talk about the logo, present the uniforms on athletes, explain why the designs are not just aesthetic, but they're functional. Like everything has a reason. That's what I learned at Nike, is that if every detail has a reason for being there, then each detail has value, and the overall picture as a whole is just magnetic.
If you want the real origin story of Nike Team Sports told by the designers who built it, check out Ken Black's podcast, The Designer Stick.
You shared with me before that I think at 18 years of age, your design professor told you that you wouldn't make it as an artist. And I think did you accept that to a point and walked away from school? But then somebody else told you from a sketch that you did that, why are you not in school? Can you just...
I left. Yeah. So that was the school I went to. And when basketball didn't work out, I thought, hey, I still got this thing. And it was the end of the term and everybody's coming in for their whatever the review is. And the head of the department was in there, and he's like, hey, Ken, you're a really nice kid. You're not cut out for a career in art or design. So, I'm just trying to help you, maybe set you on a better path. Which I'm, like, dude, this is my path. This is the only path I've got left. What are you talking about? So, so I was 18. So I basically kind of, not to him there, but, double bird, like, okay, well, I guess I'm out. So I bounced out of college. I found a job in Tacoma, Washington as an apprentice for a production company. And it was a place that makes like record albums and books and stories and doing some animation stuff. And they literally needed someone there was an illustrator there. They needed somebody who could ink illustrations. They had an airbrush artist. They needed somebody who could cut all the masks for them. It was all the just kind of grunt work, production work. And I'd been there for probably 4 or 5 months. And a guy came in named Martin French, who had gone to Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. He was an illustrator, super talented dude, amazing guy. And he says, like, what are you doing here, dude? Like, how old are you? I'm like, 18. He's like, you should be in school. I'm like, school didn't want me. I'm not good enough to be in school. He's like, no, you're in the wrong school. He goes, you've got talent. So he proceeded to help me think about future differently and put a portfolio together. I ended up taking another 3 or 4 years to get my book together, and then went back to school. But your question, did I believe what Frank is the name of that department head? Do I believe what Frank said? I think I believed it, but I didn't necessarily internalize it, if that makes sense. Like, I was like, okay, I guess you're the expert. Like, you've seen tons of kids like me. I guess you know something I don't. But for whatever reason, I didn't take that as the end, because I went and got kind of a grunt job and started doing some things. And I was doing the basics of production work. And in that process, I learned things that I wouldn't have learned had I actually stayed in school, probably. Yeah. And so all of that became accelerants along the way. And I think that's again, I don't know if it's curiosity that brought that resilience, or it was just something I wanted to do. And that's what kind of has led me through my whole career. Is that would seem really interesting to do. Maybe that's worth giving a shot. So maybe that's part of what allowed me to take that step when everything else was shut down. And, maybe there is something about the work with Dave when he's like, not every attempt is a failure. There's another way.
Right.
Sketch relates to there's another path too. So
Did you ever ask Frank why you?
it's the last time I talked to him. Last time I talked to him.
No, because we talk about all these questions that we ask and the resistance factor, and I guess you resisted in a different way by still
Yeah.
staying in that field, just going into the work field
Yeah.
as opposed to the educational field.
Yeah.
Um, But the fact that you wouldn't um, ask him or know why he thought that you didn't have a career in art, did he just think your sketches weren't that good, or
I don't know if it was the assignments that they gave or just not, some design theory and color theory, and maybe they just weren't. Um, I had part of this too is so here's some more blinders. Is I was raised in a pretty strict kind of religious deal that um, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of kind of finger wagging and you shouldn't and whatever. And so I think there would, you're now getting me into therapy. I honestly have never talked about analyze this. So this is a true therapy session. There may have been just some of the like kind of, if you watch Arrested Development, the walk where they hang their head and they kind of walk off screen. There's probably just more of that. Like, oh, wow, that's embarrassing. How did I not know this? Right. My mom will put all my art up on the fridge. You don't want any of them. So what is that? Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of just kind of that's like, okay, well, I'll go try it somewhere else, I guess.
right?
Um,
So
and
do you?
that's why I asked him because the authority piece too, don't question authority.
Yeah, it's like where that first part. I guess what I'm trying to get to is the curiosity wasn't necessarily there so early on, right? Because you acquire and
Right.
think and watching and observing and still getting experience because you're always sketching, right, in
Hmm.
school and
Hmm.
making caricatures and what have you.
Yep.
Trying to see whether that emerges from wanting to be a basketball player, not happening.
Yeah.
Something obviously is going through. You talk there. I didn't even try and get into family therapy with you, but you talked about
Yeah.
expectation and shame.
Yep.
So
Yep.
whether those rejections or I don't want to go too deep into it, but shame and expectation put on you by peers or pressure can shun you away in a different way or challenge you in a different way where you can excel. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to think whether it
Yeah.
was
Yeah. You know what I will say that since you're pushing on that in on that, I think it's a good thread. That I will say that when I got the place was called Anthony Paul Productions. And when I got there and I saw this guy that was illustrating like kind of Disney type stuff, I was like, "Ooh, that's amazing. I've always wanted to do that. I get to ink his stuff. That's killer." And then a guy who was doing airbrush art, he was fantastic. It's like, you want me to cut like this things that masks for you to do that? Like I've never touched an airbrush. This is amazing. So I do remember unlike school, which felt like do this assignment, and I wouldn't say particularly felt fulfilling as an artist, like that they were like fueling me to be like, this is amazing. Here's why you should love this. Let's go. It was much more academic and judgmental and you need a grade. I do remember the feeling of this was like, oh my goodness, I can cut your mask for you. And you need sketches of some lettering, like holy smokes. And I am coming off of the rejection of, well, that guy would have never let me touch this, but you guys, so I remember the feeling of it opening up and being like, you can help with anything you want to help with, and it's all stuff you don't know. And in the process, I'm learning. It was pretty magical. I think that was probably the awakening. And then Marty coming in at the right time and saying, "Dude, get your butt to a good school. Go
it's
where you really learn."
yeah, that's pretty interesting because so if I'm hearing it right, it's when you're kind of restricted or put maybe in a box
Hmm.
that doesn't suit your creativity or your
Yeah.
curiosity, right?
Yeah.
If you are allowed to bend the rules or break the rules, so something as simple as draw me 50 sketches in the next 60 minutes when I come back from lunch with
Mhm.
that was with Dave, right? We keep talking about Dave. You should get lots of royalties from this conversation,
Yeah.
that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, give me 50 sketches, or you have access to all these different things and help. Like that's where you thrive in that. So I guess it's about finding the right environment for the way that you're wired, right? Is where you excel.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know what, but what I would say is, and this is something that, from a corporate standpoint. So I was fortunate to lead a lot of teams, some fairly sizable teams too. And what it taught me and what I tried to impart is, those early experiences were me trying to figure out who I was, being told who you are or what you do is not sufficient, and then going and finding another path and realizing that, wow, there's actually so much more. I think the first thing for me is always, I wanted to help teammates recognize, if you can understand who you are, what you bring, and what you want to do, then you never have to be limited to the box that a company puts you in. Like,
Right.
yeah, the company hires you because I need this task done, and they expect you to literally sit in a cube, right? So, like, the metaphor is not actually funny. Here's the box on the org chart, and there's your cube to sit in. And they need that function to be performed. But most of us go, okay, so this is my box, and I will operate within it, as opposed to asking the question, well, if there's not a lid on that box, like, what can flower out of it, and how can I extend beyond it? And that's the first step of curiosity: is who am I? What do I have to offer? And then the second step is, my goodness, what is the opportunity here? They're asking for this. Well, I can give that. And why not add this as we're going along, right? Um, and I think it's for me, what made my career was that other thing. But what about this too? And I think it's what can propel, like, anybody who has a really vibrant and interesting journey. I would say you'll find those same moments, within their path, where they're saying, I am not what people expect or only what they think. And I can bring evidence to that by the things that I do, by offering something that they're like, didn't expect that.
So when you're building new teams or
Yeah.
divisions or being part of a team in Nike, what does that look like in practice? Because I'm assuming you can't have a team of 20 designers that all live outside the box. So I'm assuming there's some
Yeah.
rules in the design
Yeah.
world, right? Because you got
Yeah.
to live to these pressures and time constraints of delivering. So
Yeah.
how does it look like in terms of when you're bringing all these creative people together? How do you bring that together as a team?
Yeah. It's a great question. First, I'll talk about the last role that I had was, VP of design, digital design future at Nike. And there were 130 folks on my team. We had designers, we had engineers, um, consumer insights folks, UX, UI folks. It was a pretty wide range. First thing is just, now we're getting into leadership conversations, but the first thing is, clarity of vision. What are we all here for? And how are we, not only how are we laying out something that we can understand and say, hey, that's, like, imagine if we could all do that together, right? And if a vision is too small, then it's just like, yeah, well, that's easy. If it's big enough, then it feels like, man, that might not be that easy to get there. But if we did that, holy smokes, can you imagine? And I think that's the first thing, is giving everyone a vision to rally around, and then asking questions. How can you help us get there? Right? Yes, there are tactical pieces to your job for sure, but if we are going to do something really special, then it's going to require something really special of each of us. And there are the tactical and the housekeeping stuff that you have to do every day. But if we all stay just inside of our box, then we're just going to be one big box that's not actually. But if we can all reach or extend a little bit more, and then that's where the question is, like, what do you bring in? And then even more, what do you want to bring? What is it you want to bring that you haven't been allowed to before? I loved that role because there were a lot of departments and divisions, like technology and stuff, that I had never really been deep in. And so I spent a lot of time asking questions. Why are we doing it this way? How does that work? And the response from the team was actually really cool. They're like, I've never had a vice president at Nike sit down and have a conversation like this. It's like, well, why wouldn't they? Well, because I'm just whatever. It's like, no, like what you have is a key to unlock something. And if you can answer this for us, like, and so I think caring, I think empowering, and I think saying, you know what, be curious in your role and ask not just, did I accomplish what you asked me to do, but I think I accomplished what you asked me to do. And I thought maybe this might be even better. What do you think? And the answer will more often than not be, dude, thank you for going a little bit further. Whereas there are cultures which is, no, I just asked you to do that, shut up and go. And I'm just not a believer that teams can be great if everybody only does their job right up to the line of what's being asked.
Yeah. Well, I think the word that I kept thinking as you was explaining that to me was just challenge.
Yeah.
And not challenging in a way where you're not caring about the end result. You're empowering them by challenging them to be a part of the vision.
Yep.
And not just being dictated to as to this is what it needs to be. You need to do your piece, and then we'll get there. And it's a unified inclusion of everybody's creativity and individual influence. But if you can include everybody and then challenge each individual, listen, I'm a football coach, soccer coach by trade. Maybe a good one sometimes, maybe a bad one at others, but we use the old cliche again of be comfortable being uncomfortable is the best way to grow and develop.
Yep.
Try and use it with the college kids. Is like, they love being in the weight room. Or like, well, how does a muscle grow? It breaks down before you repair it, and then it grows, the next time, and you have to keep overloading it. So I think, the challenge to be self-aware enough to challenge other people to elevate what your vision is, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, it's cool. The thing that I love about it as well is that the challenge in the form of question is also more powerful, because when whoever you're talking to provides the answer, like, so what would it look like if that's the question, you were able to, and as they provide the answer back, it's like, just in their words, they've committed to it. It's not an expectation I'm putting on you. It's a question I've asked. And I was talking to, a couple of weeks ago, I had a few minutes with, I think he's a interim president of Utah State, but he's a professor in motivation. And I'll be happy to get you his contact info, because this is the world you live in, I know. But we were talking, I was asking about curiosity, and he's like, oh my God, curiosity is the number one most effective element of motivation. He goes, because it's intrinsic. If you can ask somebody something that has their mind open and say, I wonder, then basically they can't avoid it. We have to, as humans, go down that road, even if we just go down the road mentally and go, I don't think I'm up for that in action. But opening that door is what becomes a motivation. I do think that challenge can come through questions that opens the door to say, I hadn't really thought about that. But if you're asking, the minute I respond, it's kind of an embedded part of what's, like, I have to reckon with it. That's why I say seeing differently. What I love about seeing differently is the beauty of, once you see something, you can't unsee it. And that's even in your mind's eye. If I've never noticed anything and suddenly you're like, hey, what's that thing right there? And I go, I never even noticed that was there. Every time I walk into the room, I'm going to see it. You are now, right?
Yeah.
You can't erase it. And so I think there is so much of curiosity in leadership that needs to come from leaders at the highest level, and then their approach towards engaging with their teams in ways that inspires or infuses that curiosity in the individuals. Like, I just believe that's the way you get to success.
Catch up on all our episodes on Spotify, Apple, Podbean, or anytime at www.raisemindset.org.
I've got 3 questions here that I've just looked at on my prep sheet,
Yeah.
which I'm quite happy with the questions. So even though I don't do this, as a Q&A normally, but I'm interested on what you think. So the first one I had here was, if curiosity is the human engine, what do you think drains the fuel? What's your answer to that question?
Uh-huh.
We'll do a quick Q&A, but basically,
Yeah.
I don't normally do this. I like it to be conversational, but I like the questions.
No, it's good. I think expectations. I think algorithms.
What do you mean by algorithms?
I think lack of self awareness or knowledge. Algorithms are everything's fed to us now.
Right.
But curiosity used to be something that you have to inspire on your own. It still is. Like why would I care about that thing? Well, that light is round and it's shining and it looks more cold color than warm, whatever. Like, why would you like? You have to find a reason to care about things that don't seem to want to care about, right? There's a great an ad guy who back in the day, American advertising guy named George Lois, in a film called Art and Copy. He talks about his technique, and he's like, most people, if a client came in and said, "Hey, here's a pencil. I need you to pencil or a pen. I need you to do an ad about it," they'd be like, "Oh, who wants to do it? Like, I want to do it about shoes. I want to do it about sneakers." And he's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, look at this pencil. It has this rubber thing on the, like, has this lead. It has lead all the way through the deal. And it has this rubber thing. So if you make a mistake, you just flip it around and you can do that. Like, you can find curiosity in anything if you set yourself on the course to care." And what algorithms have done is they literally say, "Oh, you looked at that for 4 seconds. I'm going to feed you 100 more of those."
Right.
And we don't know that. Like, I worry that we kind of think that is, or Googling is, a form of curiosity, as in I Google. I know Malcolm Gladwell has talked about what he hates about Googling something is it gives you all the right answers on the front page, which means I don't need to care. Like, okay, I got my answer. There we go. Let's apply it, as opposed to give me half of them that are wrong or harebrained or whatever. And AI is doing the same thing, which is your curiosity, which I think is well placed, which I'm trying to figure out too, is in the prompts, which prompts are actually forms of questions.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something, and I'm curious about how I phrase this in a way that would have a machine go, "Oh, I know what you're actually asking." And they can't make that leap yet, so it's harder on us. But I think algorithms force us into kind of rote paths, which create more blinders because they reinforce things. I think expectations are the other one, because if I say this in hindsight, and this is not, so I don't want anybody to think that I knew this going in, but for example, being told that I'm going to work on an Air Jordan model back in the day could have been debilitating. Like, one of the coolest things, hey, I always want that big job. I want that amazing project. And then the minute you get it, you're like, oh my gosh, imposter syndrome. What do I do now? Right? Like, oh, this has to be amazing. I believe that curiosity saved me from that. And that conversation with Tinker saved me from that weight of an expectation that it has to be amazing, and allowed me to be like, if I am curious and I seek interesting things about Michael, about where the world is and how we put those things together, I'll be lost in the art. I'll be lost in the assembly of a story, as opposed to my outside brain going, "That's not very good. Well, that's stupid." Right? And so I think curiosity lets you go in. So expectations on the front end can be a weight. Hey, if I'm an athlete, I have to win all my races. Like, that's not, that's counterproductive to being curious. The curious side would be, how do I run faster than I've ever run before?
Did you feel pressure? I mean, you must do, right? You feel the pressure with the Jordan, Michael Jordan situation. How did you just said that the curiosity helped you through it, but there must have been parts of you that felt under real pressure to deliver there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's still design reviews, like design reviews to presenting to a room of 20 people. We're looking at it, and sales guy going, I don't know if I can sell it, and why are you doing it in purple, and right, having that background. So there is pressure there, but I think there's, with that curiosity, having gone through the process of finding things and like there's also what it infuses in me anyway is a sense of enthusiasm and excitement and belief and confidence to be able to go, okay, like on the Jordan 11, it has this really low profile letters that are hard to read. And one dude I remember always at that end of the table, he was the head of apparel, and he's like, I can't read that. I can't read that. I'm like, okay, John, I get it. But think about it like this. And it's like a code for kids, and we need to do this. And here's all the things behind it and how it fits with the shoe and all of that. And it's like, yeah, okay. All right, there we go. But without having had the curiosity to go through, dig in and have all of that, I couldn't have addressed it in a positive and like, okay, yeah, let's mix it up. Let's talk about it. What are you talking about? As opposed to like rejection, back to Frank, right? Oh, okay, I guess we can't do low profile type, And then the last thing I would say is it's worry and anger also is affecting our curiosity now. I have a good friend that says worry is a misuse of our imagination. And I think we are applying a certain amount of curiosity to what could go wrong, like with the whole, like, I'm not going to get into politics, but we're all going, well, if they do this, then that's going to happen. And if they do this, then that's going to happen. And we're shutting down the curiosity of even asking the question, why would somebody say that or think about that? And you don't agree with it, but, I don't know. I just think this thing.
Yeah, sorry, going back to like the algorithm thing and the Google thing, it's like, I think you said there Google gives you the right answers on but I don't know if they are actually the right answers if we're not asking ourselves the question why, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because something's feeding something to me, it's like a newspaper or a book or anything that you read, like you don't have to agree with it, but you have to have a conversation about it to understand.
Yeah.
I guess it comes back to the empathy or the empowerment or the inclusion factor is and we're not going to talk about politics because it'll just get me angry and I don't. I've stayed away from the news for the last week because I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we've got to try and just understand the different viewpoint as far away from my viewpoint as it possibly can be, because I may still be able to learn something from that I can use.
Yeah.
And by understanding the other side of the argument can surely only help me create something better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And find more balance in between. And I don't know how that works with design is you have a client who has an idea, and I design websites and I'm doing a new project right now, and I have my own ideas on what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant for the client to a degree.
Yeah.
I just say, well, this is what I think and this is why.
Yeah.
And then she says, well, this is what I want. And then if I don't think it fits within the model, then I'll say, well, it's still your site. It's still your, you've got to be happy with what's being presented as a vision of you.
Right.
So yeah, I think the curiosity is not just accepting what the algorithm is telling you.
Yeah.
And by challenging it, and I think the keywords today, obviously curiosity is one, but challenge seems to be something that keeps coming up. Challenge yourself to come up with new ideas, challenge yourself to elevate other people. I think that's an important thing, is to challenge everything that's being asked of you, whether you're happy to be in that box or whether you exploit. That's like your personal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. I've always said that the two things that pulled me through my career were curiosity and challenge, which is that looks really interesting. That looks like that might be fun. And then the challenge is, and I might get hurt trying it, but like, let's give it a shot. Am I ready for it? I don't know, but let's give it a shot. If I could go back 1 second, what you had asked earlier about what are the barriers to being curious, and some of what you said just a moment ago about, and this is not political, but this is asking the question of the other side. Like if I can be curious about why they are in that position. I think a lot of times we have fear that if we are curious, it means we're somehow giving up something that is important to us or a value, or that is not the case at all. It is actually having a broader understanding that can help us, I think, make better and more informed decisions and do it enthusiastically as opposed to in anger and angst and all that kind of stuff, right? And because if I can understand, if you and I have a complete difference on completely different subjects, it doesn't have to be politics, it could be in a negotiation for business or something. If I can really be curious about, like, why are you even doing this? Why do you want to do this? Why do we want to do this together? And what is it you're in for? Um, we can have a completely different conversation than if we're just having this transactional argument about who gets what, right? And um, that is where I think just culturally we can be in a better place if we open up and we go, you know what, being curious doesn't mean giving up my standards, giving into beliefs, or compromising on stuff I think is important. It
Yeah.
means I'm interested in understanding more.
Yeah, I think you've answered the third of the three questions there, which was what changes when curiosity shifts from being a personal habit to a cultural one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think we've just answered that one in terms of, I don't know, in one line. I guess it just makes us better and more informed. I don't know if it's too simplistic to say that is if everybody's curious. And one thing I've learned about this podcast, um, and through an educator course that I did when I left my previous job after 15 years, was listening is a skill that everybody should be, just like reading and writing. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it's in the curriculum. I don't have children, so I don't know if it's in the curriculum, but we do reading, writing, and math.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there should be a listening component to how you actually have a conversation with somebody and how you listen to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Without, you can have your idea, but don't formulate your idea until you've heard
Right.
somebody talking. And I guess curiosity, when it goes from um, being curious about yourself and then being curious about somebody else and what their experiences are. Uh, and I'm still learning that. Like I'm nowhere near as, say, empathetic as I can be in terms of always asking the right questions or getting to the other side of it. But learning more about other people is what's fascinating about this podcast to me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so we've linked curiosity and self awareness, and I think we've probably danced around this, but I'm assuming we come to a point where we don't think people are spending enough time being curious about themselves or other people, right? I think that's probably a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
goal.
for sure. Again, we're hustled through life kind of by society. So we get into kindergarten and start to get into school, and they're like, "Okay, here's your desk. You sit like this. You line up single file. We're going to the bathroom now. Yeah, you got 20 minutes to play on the playground. You can do whatever you want. Just don't hurt anybody, and then come back in. We're all facing forward. We're doing the same things at the same time, all the way through college." And then we get into our career, and out of college I've taught a career development class in College of Business at the university. And I changed the title of the class from career development to the story of you, because we don't know how to tell the story of us. And what I found with those kids, and what I found with most of the people with whom I've worked and who've worked for me, is we've gone through life and we get into this thing, and then we think about what's the next thing based on where I am today, because that's the way it's worked. And we're not taught, we're not taken at any point in time through the process of asking, well, who are you? Who do you think you are? How does the world see you? Like, are those two things congruent or not? And then ask the question, who do you want to be? And I don't mean like, do you want to be president of the United States, or do you want to be a professional basketball player or whatever? But who do you want the world to see you as? And if you can ask that question, same with curiosity, and be like, I don't like, where do I begin? Well, a human who does things like this, kind of in ways like that, begins to be that starting point. And if we can, I'm a firm believer, and I've done it in my own, recent years, as of probably 7 or 8 years ago, kind of did the same thing, which is, what's my central theme? What is the mission for how I want to help people, how I want to be seen in the world? It becomes a barometer or a guide rail for how I can behave in ways that people go, of course, that's who Ken is. right?
Yeah.
And it feels really good when people say, well, talk to him because this guy talks kind of about stuff like that, and he kind of thinks like this, and everything he does is kind of whatever. We're also, I think, as part of that system of pushing us through, the opportunity to express a unique identity is not embraced. Like, it's much easier for the system if we all fit back into the cube or the box or at the desk in the grade school, right? And we raise our hands when we're supposed to raise our hands.
Yeah.
And I think that probably is part of a little bit back to that last question too, is we've been trained to act in unison with whatever group we're connected to, as opposed to being able to ask the question, who am I and why does this matter to me? And how do I want to exist and be seen in this world? What's the impact I want to have? I actually, one of this process that I kind of went through myself, I took I was working at an agency as a chief creative officer a couple of years ago, and had 3 executive creative directors working for me. And I took them through the same process. And the reason was, and I shared with them what the work I had done on myself, like, here's who I think I am. Here's where I think what I think I do well. Here's why I'm here. And the values that are important to me. And then had each of them do it and then share it with each other. And like the awakening of like, okay, now I understand why. Now I understand why you say that. When you say that every time, I understand what it means, right? And that is, the central thing, being curious about yourself, and then that leading to some articulation of who you are, who you want to be, and then being able to share that in that way with other people allows others to also know how to engage with you in a way that is meaningful for both of you, and to ask for the best of you, because it's clear you have things that are amazing for me to be connected to you, and vice versa, right? And as we understand what we can each bring, like, our lives get better because we have access to somebody who sees the world or thinks about things in a way that's different than we do. And the power of that, and seeing that team become more closely connected, more driven and directed, because they go, oh, now I know how we're going to rely on each other. I know what role you play, and I know what role you want to play. And then curious in a different way about each other's situation, even to the point of, how can I help? Now, I think I can help you in a different way, was really powerful. So I think the self-awareness, I think self-awareness is mistaken these days as therapy, as opposed to asking yourself questions about the possibility of how you want the world to see you. And it ain't about making $1 million, or like, I have that conversation all the time between be and do. And Gary Russell and I have had this too. There's a lot to say, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think Gary talked about that in one of your previous podcasts, but I think that's a mistake, because I'm saying I want to be, a CEO or CMO or something like that, as opposed to, what do I want to do? I want to work with athletes. I want to be outside in a field, engaging with people, helping them think about stuff. I want to use my voice for this. And if you can even get, I firmly believe, if you can get to the place where you can articulate the things you want to do, then you can look around at careers, at jobs, at needs within society, and say, that's why this is a better fit for me, than looking at a job list and going, well, nothing here looks like it's a marketing chief marketing officer, so I guess there's nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a miss there. I wish colleges addressed it more. I wish when we were much younger, like, we changed so much when we were really young, but yeah, I wish somebody had helped me with that before, when I hit 50 and was like, yeah.
Like what you're hearing, share it forward. And if you're still here, you're part of the journey, so make sure you subscribe, like, and share, so everybody can hear more of these stories from embracing the journey.
We haven't necessarily digged into a little bit of your career path in terms of when you left Nike to create, was it SPARQ? I think you created as a separate entity.
SPARQ Training,
Just in terms of, like, again, we talked about the pinnacle of working in a corporate space. What kind of was the trigger for creating SPARQ, leaving? Can you just explain to me a little bit about that? Because it's hard to make that jump away. I know I've recently gone through it. Just talked about it a little bit about more about self discovery than anything else,
Yep. Yep.
and getting outside the box. But what led you to creating Spark? What led you to separating from Nike and then ultimately circling back?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So I was at Nike for 12 years. Had been doing some really awesome, fun stuff. Right place, right time, and some cool projects. Um, I got to a place where, and I love Nike, great relationships. Things were smoking. I was in a great job. And I'd always had these ideas around, hey, what if I could, and maybe I should. And I did get to the point where I was like, hey, it's really easy being a Nike guy. Like every plane you're on, they're like, oh, you work at Nike? Hey, can you get me these shoes, or what athletes do you know, or whatever. Um, and for whatever reason, I kind of just was just feeling like I need to do something on my own. And I also want to know if I've had pretty good success because it's Nike and you can't fail because it's big and it like won't let you fail, or if there's something I've got. So I guess there is a little bit of self exploration in that. Now that you bring that up, so I left after 12 years. We started a company called SPARQ Training, which was speed, power, agility, reaction, quickness. It was intended to be a training brand for mostly for high school athletes, young athletes. We developed around physical testing. We started with the NFL Combine. Quickly back in the day, fast kids talked about their 40 time, and strong kids talked about their bench press. We're like, well, the world's talking about athletes. So how about if we create a number that you go through these 4 tests and it kicks out a number for you at the end? So we're all apples to apples. We're actually looking. We covered a lot of ground over 5 years. We got 1 million ratings in the can, and after 5 years, Nike bought the brand and the product side of the biz, and we sold the media side to ESPN. So I came back to Nike with that acquisition. The reason why you asked, why did I leave? There was some questions of, hey, I could leave and I could screw everything up. But the bigger drive for me was, what if I don't? For not what if we fail? It was more like, what if I don't do this and somebody else does? Or what if I don't and I never know? And that in the end became bigger to me than a fear of failure. Um, we had partnered with Nike a little bit and then came back. And so that really was, and there was another project that I was going to do in relation to that, and SPARQ just became the full-time deal. But like that was literally leaving Nike on a Friday and walking into an empty warehouse on a Monday and going, okay, wait, I don't have a computer. There's not a table. Like, I don't know. In fact, I think it was that second week we were having a combine in Florida week, and from coming off of traveling with Nike travel is amazing, and this hotel I'm staying at, I go to what I think is the bathroom, and I open a door and it's a boiler room, not the bathroom, and the door comes off the hinges. And so that within 10 days was like, okay, yeah, what have I done? Maybe let's see where this goes. But what I will say about that time is learning how to be a startup and lean, as opposed to being on the expense account with a company that has all of the resources and everything, was a great way to know what you're made of, what you can do, and how to be resilient and how to be resourceful and all that stuff. And then when I came back with the acquisition. I was sitting in meetings at Nike where people are kind of bitching around the old corporate stuff, and I was just laughing, going, "You guys have no idea. Like what you're upset about right now is not a problem. Like that is not a problem. What I saw in the last 5 years, like you have no idea." And so, yeah, I think it's the same thing, that curiosity and challenge. It's like, what if we did something and we could make something that actually had, I talk about this a lot, on the timeline of sport. Could we do something that actually has a little blip that people go, something special, something interesting happened there? Did not plan on selling it back to Nike, but that's the way it worked out. So I came back to the family, and then there were a bunch of other things that came with that, which is a big company that didn't know what to do with a little company. There was a certain amount of not invented here, and so that's where how exciting to be acquired by a company like Nike, and we have a team. And at that point, I was GM and running the business, and this place does not know what to do with us, even though I know who these people are. They're like, yeah, well. And so it was back to the drawing board of figuring out, okay, if Nike doesn't know what to do with us, then we need to figure out who we are in the context of Nike, which is different. And we'll shift who we are, and we'll explore the possibilities of who Nike is, what does Nike need, what is it that we fill, and redefine ourselves within that space. And I had a meeting with Charlie Denson, who was one of the co-presidents, I think, about a year in, and was giving him an update on stuff, and he just laughed. He goes, "Well, you're not doing what we bought you for, but you're doing what we need. So keep going." And that was just another example, I think, of it would have been really easy to go, well, they don't want us, and they don't what do we do, as opposed to again, I think being curious and going, okay, well, what do they need, and what do we have a unique position to offer. And the things we did in the 4 or 5 years that I led it were we have a lot of firsts at Nike that Nike developed and pushed out because of the work we did, which is great. So
In terms of you going back into Nike, knowing what Nike was, feeling that they couldn't really handle the company in the right way, instead of seeing it as a problem, you've reframed it in a way, well, how can we make it work?
yep.
And not everybody has that ability. I don't think. I'm trying to figure out if it's possible to teach that type of ability to reframe.
Yeah. It's
So
interesting.
it's an interesting.
I think Lee, I think the curiosity muscle, I think curiosity is a muscle, and I think that is still at the center of that even. Okay, well, if this isn't what we can be, then what can we be? Because if you can develop that muscle, then pretty much every situation you're in, you can be in two places at once, which is the place you're in, this is what it is,
Yeah.
and also in the place of going, what else could this be? And
Yeah.
in doing that, it can give interesting options for what the next step could be, forward, to the left, to the right. And any one of them could still be right.
Yeah.
Which is fun of it.
So last couple of questions.
Okay.
And I say this to everybody when I get to this point. I'm always very appreciative of the time that you give me. The question you asked me when we set up this podcast sat with me for a long time, and I said this to you prior, was you asked me, how do you want to move the world? And I don't know whether that was I don't mean this in a facetious way, but I don't know if that was a genuine question or just a way that you kind of sign off emails with, because I know you have your own podcast and people you're talking to about stuff that you've designed. And it sat with me for a long time as I was going through different projects. And it kind of goes back to why I came to America in the first place, about why did I want to coach? What was the reason why I got into that field? And I'd always said to myself, I just wanted to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that was going to look like. It could have been just one child on the field that I helped become a better soccer player. It could be something as simple as that. But I always had that thought in my mind when I came to America initially, is I just want to make it. I don't want to be sat behind a computer doing the 9 to 5 and just kind of, live the working week and then the weekend.
Yeah.
So when you ask me that question, it's kind of a little bit of a full circle. It kind of reconnecting me with what I wanted my podcast to continue to be, what the book out of the podcast, what was going to be designed to be.
I love that.
The same question I would ask to you now is, how do you want to move the world?
I want to help people see differently. I want to help people see possibility in a different way and know how to make it real. I think the background for me, as a designer, the beauty of being a designer is you lead with curiosity, but in the end, something ends up on the table. Like you're making something, right? And I think a lot of times we live either in the, hey, I'm making this thing, and we forget about the story and the curiosity on the other side, or we live in theory and we go, well, this would be amazing, but it never has to turn into anything. So we don't have to reckon with the rough parts of making it real. That to me is see your possibility differently and make it real is the centerpiece. I've said my central theme is seeing different changes everything. I believe that. And I'd love to, what I've been obsessed lately with is wondering how I can help, what I can create, what I might be able to do to help people develop curiosity as a muscle, as I said. Is there a way to think of curiosity as a meditative practice? Like I have so many people tell me, like, your brain's all over the place. You're always talking about, like, you need to meditate, dude. You need to you need to meditate. And I'm like, yeah, but when I meditate, my brain, like, think about this, and then I go there, and then I go, like, right. For me, I just wonder if there isn't something that could be created that's magical about um, focused and active curiosity as a meditation practice that helps us learn how to move through life with just a little bit at a time, opening the aperture to see things that we're missing.
Have you found any answers?
I have like 15 books right here on curiosity with some actions and other stuff. So I'm in the thick of being obsessed with this. Curiosity is the differentiator, as the thing that makes us human. And just getting into the question of why is it so hard for us to be curious? I think it's what actually is what is the human condition is like we woke up one day and are like, hey, what's that? How would this work? Why don't we? Who are you? What's the right? And I'll leave with this, that like as I've been looking into this, the place we are today is we're lacking curiosity, which I think is what sets us apart. If you look, there was a study that was done of professors, scientists that work with chimpanzees. We've given chimpanzees the ability to speak through sign language, right? They have 6,000 gestures. And they have a paper that came out recently that says chimpanzees don't ask questions. They can say anything they want. They have the ability to communicate, and they don't ask questions other than more food. Why is it like they don't go, where am I going? Why am I in this cage? What's the deal? Right? So I think there's a leap that curiosity is a differentiator there. And I think it's also connected to our future, because what you have said at the beginning within AI is you're trying to figure out the prompts to ask AI to give you a better result or something more thoughtful, because AI also doesn't ask questions other than, would you like me to put that into a PDF or a grid or a form that you can print out?
Yeah. You have to ask a million iterations, I think, to get to the answer that makes sense to you, or to get multiple to make a decision on what you. I don't know. I find myself asking a question and then asking another question and then another question, and trying to get to something that I agree with and makes sense to me based on the knowledge that I already have. So I think it's really important, I think, to ask. I don't even think you have to ask the right questions. I think by asking some of the wrong questions, you can sometimes get more information and knowledge.
Clumsy questions probably provide more interesting answers anyway.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm watching the finishing off the Big Bang Theory recently, and they had a part where they're talking about the I don't know, string theory or something, and the theory from Sheldon and them was fought out, and then the other guys who actually proved it was just like, well, we didn't know what we were doing, and it just kind of happened. And sometimes I think it works that way. And sometimes the path that we're on doesn't always have signposts, right? Like you sometimes just have to figure it out. The one thing I wanted to think, it's interesting. We'll talk about blinkers, blinders, and rules. Is when babies are first born, the way that they learn is they learn by watching, observing. You think about, they can't talk, similar to the chimpanzees, right? They can't really ask questions.
Yeah.
but they're studying everything. And I know obviously the work that Steve and Gary are doing with Winning Profile
Yeah.
um, and and the company with
Yeah.
inner athlete,
Yeah.
the malleable time for the brain is in those younger formative years.
Mm-hmm.
And by um, I work with 4 or 5 year olds right now where I give them a lot of creativity to, okay, if you break the rules, it's okay as long as we continue to ask the question about, well, why are you doing that, and making
Yep.
sure you come back. But then we put more rules on individuals the further they go along the process. Um, Last question for you, went off on a little bit of a tangent there, is if you did have to speak to your 10-year-old self today, is there something that you would tell him?
Mm. Yeah, I would say keep your eyes open and ask as many questions as you can. And I'm not sure the way to say don't be afraid, not fearless, but let your curiosity take you to interesting places.
I'm extremely grateful to Ken for sharing his story and grateful to you for listening. If this conversation meant something to you, please like, comment, and follow so more people can find these stories. Thank you for watching and listening to Embracing the Journey, Living Beyond Limits.